Did you know that hip mobility is one of the best indicators of not only quality of life as we age, but also decreased risk of injury and longevity? And when it comes to hip mobility, there are two static exercises that stand tall above the rest. With the first one, we're gonna go through at least half a dozen variations because you can always take it a step further. And with the second one, we don't even need variations because it is so goddamn effective. So if you're ready, let's have some fun. Now, our first exercise will be the pigeon pose, but what most people consider to be the end goal of the pigeon pose, being able to bring your entire leg into contact with the ground and pushing your hips downwards while keeping your upper body upright, this is in fact just the beginner level. Once you're here, this is when we can start really working on our pigeon pose. If you do not already possess the mobility to get into a classic pigeon pose, start out in a kneeling position, bringing your foot into one line with your hind leg, and then we're gonna try and move our knee with our hip into external rotation down closer towards the ground. Now you can leave both hands here and you only move down as low as you can without experiencing any pain. Now when it comes to stretching, discomfort is totally acceptable, and probably if you don't have any discomfort, then you're doing it wrong. However, if you are getting into the level of pain, then you're definitely going too far and you need to step it back just a little bit. So your very first goal is working from here until you can bring your knee all the way down and your lower leg into complete contact with the ground, actively pushing your hip down towards the ground, lengthening your hip flexor, your quadriceps and your lower abdominals. And now we can work on truly advancing and working on your pigeon pose. Now our second level for the pigeon pose will be bringing our chest or our upper body closer towards the ground. Start with your arms extended and move down on your lower arms until you're really comfortable in this position. You're lengthening your glutes, you're lengthening the outside of your quads and basically all your posterior chain down towards your knee. And once we start moving our lower body closer and closer to the ground, we're gonna get the slightest opening in our lumbar spine. Lower back mobility is strongly connected to hip mobility. So we will try and move closer and closer and closer with our upper body until we can at the very least stay comfortably right here. So level number two, we could call it a static sleeping pigeon, just like so. Now, up until now, we've been only working on our flexibility, stretching and lengthening our muscles, but not on our mobility. Our mobility is our ability to take a joint through an ever-increasing range of motion through our own strength and through a controlled movement. So what we're gonna do from here is start working on our first dynamic pigeon. Be sure that you're truly comfortable in this position before you advance, because we wanna get fully upright in our upper body, bring both hands behind our head. Now we're gonna start folding forward in our hip, bringing our face all the way down to the ground before we elevate our upper body again and actively pushing our hips down. And if you are doing everything right, we have not only an insanely strong stretch in most of our lower body musculature, but we also have absurd activation in our entire posterior chain, working through our glute, biceps, and back musculature, especially our lumbar musculature, which is very important to work at if you want to reduce your chances of injury in the long run. And this way we have taken our pigeon pose to the highest level that we can on the ground. And now comes the fun part. Because advancing from here takes us to our very first elevated pigeon pose. With our front leg elevated, all we want to do is start pushing our upper body lower and lower and lower towards the ground until our leg is parallel to the ground at hip height. With your goal being bringing your knee all the way down to the ground. We have this very nice feeling external rotation in our hip, and we have a lot of stretch surrounding our hip joint. So this level is going to be static. Once you're down here, you want to hold for 30 seconds, and only then can we advance to the next level. Because this level is where we truly get into the advanced territory. We're gonna switch from this external rotation into internal hip rotation, just like so. before we slowly, in a controlled manner, bring that leg down once again. When it comes to the movement pattern, it's very simple. Stand the leg up and move into external hip rotation. Internal hip rotation using our adductors, external hip rotation, and release. However, depending on your mobility, you will either have to raise your knee to have enough flexibility to stand that leg up. We always also want to stay in ankle extension in the back. This would be ankle flexion, this would be ankle extension. So we're lengthening our tibialis as well. Or if you are really flexible, you will be able to stand that leg up without your knee leaving the ground. And once you are there, now we are ready to get into the next level, because not only will it be the last one, it will also be the most advanced one, and it's going to require a lot of strength. And once again, with this exercise, I would highly suggest only get into this one if you are already a master of the last couple of levels, because this one can really get you hurt if you overdo it or if you do not have the necessary control and flexibility to go through this movement pattern. You've already learned half of it. We're gonna get into internal rotation, and then we're gonna get into extension in our knee before we reverse the entire movement slowly, once again in a controlled manner, moving forward into an external hip rotation and bringing our knee down at the very end. Now we have a couple of changes here. The most important one being that we're not in ankle extension, but we are in ankle flexion also with our knee down on the ground. So now we have a nice stretch in our entire foot musculature, which is a pretty nice bonus to have. Start by elevating our knee, which in turn is going to give us this nice rotation in our hip. Then we flex our adductors, standing that leg up, flexing our quads, extending our knee, and then we want to slowly, once again, move forward. We're still rolling over our toes. We're moving into external hip rotation. Most of our body weight is carried with our hip flexors and our hip musculature, and only then are we ready to sit our knee down. Up, extend, and reverse. Up, extend, and reverse. Which brings us to our second exercise, for which you will only require a wall. And this is by far my favorite static stretch when it comes to hip flexibility. We want to bring our lower leg into complete contact with the wall behind us, and we want to stand up our front leg just like so. Now for many people, this will already lead to a little bit of a stretch in their hip flexors, or lower in their quadriceps, or even in their lower abdominals, depending on how tight you really are right there. And we also have a nice little bonus of stretching on the other side in our biceps. But from here, there are a couple of things that we can adjust to make this exercise not only more effective, but also help us switch the focus from one muscle to another. And it's called the couch stretch. And with the couch stretch, your very first goal should be being able to stand fully upright while flexing your posterior chain to push your hip forward, lengthening our anterior chain all the way down to our knee. And once you're here, now we can really use the couch stretch to its maximum benefit. Now to do that, you need to actively push your hips forward as much as you can, and even if you want to add a little bit more upper body flexibility, start arching your back, going into complete spinal extension in your upper body, which is in turn also going to help you open up your chest and shoulders a little bit more. Now keep in mind, the more we push forward, the more we are working on our hip flexors at the top level here, inserting around our hip joint. However, once you start pushing your hips backwards instead of forward, you're gonna switch the stretch from your top insertions when it comes to your hip flexors down your quadriceps, lower and lower and lower, to your knee insertions and the bottom part of your quads. So now you can truly lengthen your entire anterior chain from your knee all the way up to your chest, simply by pushing forward, putting the focus on this part, arching your back, adding a little bit of focus in this part, and holding for 30 seconds before you push back. And now you have this absurdly strong stretch in your lower quads, which most people really struggle with targeting. It's very easy to target your top side when it comes to your hip flexor musculature, but it's very hard to work on your lower quad stretch. And the couch stretch is the one that makes this an absolute walk in the park. Not only that, but you can hold the couch stretch for very long times and it still feels pretty goddamn comfortable. Now, with these two hip mobility exercises, you should basically never have any more problems when it comes to not only working on your hip flexibility, but also your strength and control over the surrounding musculature, which in turn is much more effective than just pulling on a muscle, hoping you get more flexible, just working on the stretch, and over time increasing your risk of injury because you're disregarding the control and the strength part, which should move with the flexibility part. But with that said, once again, sadly, that's all the time I've left for you today. If you liked the video, like the video and subscribe. And please, guys, check out other videos on this channel because we literally have new ones every single day. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Captain Cairo. Peace out.